This Pride Month, we are taking a closer look at issues affecting the LGBTQ community. I want to bring in author, artist, and activist, Hope Giselle. She joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Hope, a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to get your perspective for our audience watching this sort of fight, this very public fight between the federal government and certain states play out. This idea that you have the federal government essentially trying to impose a ban on transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. Obviously, it is a controversial issue, especially when you consider the political climate that we are in right now. Just give us your perspective as you watch this fight play out.
I think that as we watch this, we have to be mindful that, just as the clip said before, we're dealing with people. And in this particular instance, we're also dealing with children. And we're not carrying them with kid gloves, so to speak, in a way that shows that we as a human race can be kind, we can be empathetic, while also being practical to the idea that not everyone is going to agree with the idea of trans girls playing in girls' sports. Not everyone is going to agree with the idea of trans boys playing in boys' sports. But first and foremost, we have to deal with the core of this, which is that we are dealing with children. And we're not really having the conversation about what they want. We're having a conversation about what the government and the social status wants, which is ridiculous.
It must be so hard to be so young. I mean, you're still forming as a human being, and yet you're sort of caught in the middle of this massive political fight. I can't imagine what that must be like. So from the Republican perspective, a lot of Republicans who are sort of pushing for this ban are essentially saying that this ban would protect women and girls and their ability to compete fairly in sports. That is their argument. I see you shaking your head, and you can tell us about what you think. But the fact is, there are very few transgender athletes in this country, very few transgender athletes who are trying to participate in sports, period. Just explain to us from your perspective why you think this has become such an issue for Republicans.
Well, first and foremost, I think that it's a throw the rock and hide the hand sort of situation. If I distract you with what's going on over here, then I can really do all of these other things over there. Republicans are not focusing on health disparities. Republicans are not focused on housing disparities. Republicans are not focusing on a lot of the things that they said that they would focus on. And so what they found is a crux in the judicial system that says, if we give them something to hate, right, they will focus on those things, and then we'll have more time to piddle-paddle or BS around the issues that people actually care about. And what they found is that transgender people get people talking, whether it's for the good or for the bad. And once you get people talking, you can distract them so that you can do other things. I think that as trans folks, and I think especially with the youth that are growing up today, what they've got to learn is something that I think a lot of trans folks have learned, is that our existence in and of itself is political. It's a protest. It shouldn't be. But what they will learn to understand and what they will grow to understand is that using your existence to not only be political, but to be a protest will ultimately work out in our favor. None of these things that have happened in the past have held up or lasted long, and I don't foresee this lasting long either. People ultimately have empathy. People ultimately want the best for everybody, and I foresee that that's exactly what's going to happen with this situation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Democrats agree with you. They say that this is simply a wedge issue that is used to divide and distract. So just from a practical perspective, though, what alternative is there? I mean, if these bans go into effect completely, what alternative is there for transgender athletes looking to compete in sport? Because a lot of them actually fear for their safety if they are forced to compete with men and boys.
Absolutely. I think that what folks have to understand and recognize is that while there are many people who do have genuine concerns about trans girls playing with cis girls, there are a lot of folks that genuinely just want to see trans girls hurt. There are a lot of young boys that are being taught to hurt people that are different. And we've seen this play out time and time again, whether we're talking about race or religion. And so when we think about trans folks, we don't see this being any different. But what I do feel like could happen, and what I see and what I'm hearing whispers of, are that trans folks are going to start to create their own leagues. They are going to start to create underground spaces. I also start to see a lot of allied trans inclusionary students that are going to say, we're not playing anymore. If our sister can't play, if our brother brother can't play, if our sibling can't play, then we won't play. And this school won't have a team if it can't be inclusive. And I think that the mixture of those three things, no matter how they happen or in what order they happen, I'm grateful to see students standing up as allies. I'm grateful to see parents coming to the aid of trans kids that don't belong to them. I'm also grateful to see trans kids also saying we don't need that and we would rather have our own where we're going to be welcomed than to have to force our way into something that is just due to us as students of this school who want to be athletes.
And final question for you. We were expecting this case to actually drop from the Supreme Court this week, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, this idea of the Tennessee law that effectively prevents doctors from providing surgery or hormone therapy to minors seeking care for gender dysphoria. If that ban goes into effect, explain to us what that means for minors, for young people who are looking for this type of treatment. I mean, obviously, you know, it could already mean that they have to travel for miles to get to. There's all sorts of things that have to change as a result, depending on what the Supreme Court decides. Can you give us your perspective on that?
What I want folks to understand is that when you are a trans person, it's not something that you choose. A lot of people believe that, but it's not. It's innately in you. And a lot of folks who transition out of the dire need to stay alive. If these things go into effect, we're going to have a couple of things that might happen. The suicide rates that are already high in transgender and TGNC youth are going to skyrocket. And if not, we're going to start to see a lot more of them getting black market hormones and things that they're not necessarily sure of what they're ingesting. If they can't go to the doctor and have gender affirming care surgeries once they turn 18, we're going to start to see a lot more people going to back alley doctors and doing things to their body that could honestly and overtly kill them. And I think that unless the Republican Party is telling us in so many words that is what they want. They want a genocide of trans people. They want trans people to be unaliving themselves. They want trans people to be getting negligent care. Then I think that we have to reground this conversation in a space of humanity. All human beings deserve access to healthcare that is safe and that is certified by the board. And doctors that want to provide that care should be allowed to do so without the fear of losing their license or without the fear of going to jail. It's ridiculous. If you truly care about children the way that they say that they do, then you'll protect them and you'll make sure that they have the care that they need. But if you care about your agenda, right, and you care about the agenda of ensuring that this race is predominantly white, cishet, and indifferent to change, then keep doing what you're doing, but know that there are going to be consequences.
All right, Hope Giselle, live for us. Thank you so much for sharing your viewpoints with us. We appreciate it.